He loves you unconditionally. No matter where you've been, no matter what you've done, his arms are wide open for you.
We cannot let their words become the words of our story. We got to let God's words become the words of the story of our lives. Amen?
You do know God is called the righteous judge. And you know what a judge has the power to do? A judge has the power to overrule. I don't know what you've been calling yourself. I don't know what you think about yourself, but the righteous judge wants to overrule it and say you are loved, you are anointed, you are chosen, you are beloved, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are God's child.
Don't jump out on that marriage. Don't jump out on that relationship. Don't jump out from that church. Stay on the ship.
We are the redeemed of the Lord, the sheep of his pasture. We are forgiven, free, and favored. We are called and chosen. We are God's masterpiece, the apple of his eye. We are the righteousness of God. We are world changers, and we are history makers.
I believe God has given me some keys to help you climb out of the dip. Don't believe for a moment that it's over. I know the devil has backed you into a corner and gotten you to believe it's checkmate. Don't listen to that lie. I'm here to tell you there's still a move that the devil has missed. It ain't over till God says it's over. And last time I checked, my Bible still says he who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it till the day of Jesus Christ. Listen, I'm begging you today, don't quit in the dip. Welcome to night number 2 of Don't Quit in the Dip conference. How amazing was last night?
Oh, you know, Pastor Sammy is incredible. Woo. What a man of God, a prophet in the house of God. And I believe many times when we hear of don't quit in the dip or not quitting completely, is having men and women of God who've been down the road, right, serving the Lord for several years, and you see them on the other side of the story and what he has endured. It is amazing to see him doing what he's doing, and what a tremendous man of God he is, whom we respect deeply.
Yeah, last night was great. Tonight's gonna be crazy. Don't forget conference night number 3 and opening day of the book launch is tomorrow. We still have on the conference speaker lineup, we have Darius Daniels, Lisa Turker, John Maxwell, and Christine Kane. Woo. Are you kidding me right now?
Oh, you know.
All of this for Don't Quit in the Dip conference. So text your friends right now. Tell them to tune in wherever you are around the globe, because you don't want to miss. This just might be what your friends need, guys. Even your friends who don't know God. It's a great tool, a great invitation, because they might need to get out of the dip and they might need some vision for their life. This is what we wrote the book for. We're gonna actually have a drive-through book signing tomorrow. And then there's 21 chapters in here. I wanna challenge you, take the 21-day challenge, all right? 21-day challenge, read one chapter every single day. And really what I'm fired up about too, babe, is that we have all of our small groups are launching August the 22nd, and they're all going through Don't Quit in the Dip.
That's incredible. And especially for some of you small group leaders, you have no idea the impact that you have on people, especially your sphere of influence. So taking a book like this and doing it together really solidifies, you know, their relationship with Jesus, solidifies relationships with their parents, their husbands, their wives, their children, because you don't know what they're going through. People wear a mask, and they're notorious. We're notorious for wearing masks because we want to keep up the appearance that we have everything okay. Don't quit in the dip is definitely the message for this age.
I want to introduce to you one of my friends now is going to share their story with you of why they didn't quit in the dip. I hope you've been enjoying the Don't Quit the Dip conference. It's for you, everybody. I'm so fired up about you getting this new book, Don't Quit in the Dip. You can buy it anywhere books are sold. And I wanted to have some friends talk with you over the few days and just kind of invest in you and add value to you. So today, guys, you're in for the biggest treat of your life. I have my good friend, Dr. Darius Daniels. He is pastor of Change Church. He wrote an incredible book that you also need to buy called Relational Intelligence. If you ever work with people, you need to get this book. Like, thank you for being here, man.
Man, listen, it's my honor. And I say that not just because you're my friend, right? This is one of the things I had a significant relational loss. You know about this. My executive pastor was with me 13 years, only 42 years old, passed away last year in October 31st. And so one of the things that I realized through that death, I knew it conceptually, I knew it practically now, and that's this. Everybody is equally valuable in the eyes of God. Everybody does not add equal value to you. Wow. And so when someone uniquely adds value to you, you need to value that relationship uniquely. You need to vocalize that value, because one day you're not going to be able to, you know? And so, you know, I honor you and our friendship. So I'm here because of that, but also because I believe in this message, bro. It's dope, it's important, and I think it's timely. So I'm excited to talk about it.
I can't wait. Everybody loves you. When you came and spoke a few months ago, BC, before COVID.
Hey, I like that.
The church, they're still talking about the message.
BC.
And yeah, exactly. It was so powerful. And we've done a couple other things together, but man, your friendship means the world to me. And I feel iron sharpening iron.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to you and ask you a few questions. One, you are a very accomplished speaker, author, pastor, husband, father. And for people that are watching this conference, a lot of times people will look to somebody who is where they would like to be. Mm-hmm. And they have this false idea of, this false narrative in their mind of them just arriving, like stumbling into destiny, never had a problem, never had an issue. Many times they're like, hey, I want what that guy has, but they don't know what you had to go through to get there. Yeah. And I'd love for you to talk for a moment and share your story with everybody watching about seasons that you wanted to quit.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of them, bro. That's like every season, right? I played basketball. I wanted to quit in college. So
do you still play ball?
I don't, man. I don't. So the only time I play for the most part is when I'm playing with my son, who plays, my youngest son.
Can he beat you?
Not yet. He's only 13. Oh. So when he's able to beat me, I'm gonna stop playing.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what you do. So
I felt a hamstring.
It's like it's over. But no. So so there are a number of ones, but this is one that comes to my mind, right? And I want to talk about this one because I feel like, for me, it's probably one of the most significant ones.
All right.
And it is this idea of this temptation for me to quit. Not in the sense of quitting my role as a lead pastor at Change Church, but quitting or giving up on the vision I believe God gave me for it. Mm. You can quit and not leave. Yep. So I think that's really important, you know, that's a really important distinction. Like, even in the context of marriage, a relationship, you can quit and not leave it. You can quit making the kind of emotional investment that you need to make to maintain intimacy. Yeah. You can quit prioritizing it the way that you need to prioritize it. So all of those kinds of things. So for me, I planted a church, bro. I mean, I was sitting in seminary at Princeton, and this professor was talking about, his name was Darryl Gooder, changed my life. And so he's talking about just like God's original intent for the church and blah, 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 blah. And I'm listening to him, and he's giving language to what I've been feeling in my heart for, I don't know, probably the past few years. And I'm sitting in his class and I'm saying, I want to lead a church like that. Wow. Like, it was as clear as day to me. So when we planted the church, I wasn't just planting a church, defining its success by nickels and noses. I was planning a church because I had this vision of this place and this space that was not this or that, but this and that. I had a vision of a church that actually resembled the founder of our faith, which is Jesus, right? Because sometimes there's this huge disconnect between the founder of our faith and the religion that bears its name. And I was like, man, I see this. I see a church that is not this or that, it's this and that. And so here's a scripture that just kind of was like the foundation for me. The kingdom of God is like a fisherman who threw out a net and got all kind of fish. And when I looked at the ministry of Jesus, I was like, yo, that was him. Mm. Wall Street, off the street, same place. Right. Spiritually contemplative, a man of prayer, solitude, reflection, fasting, yet justice oriented at the same time. Not either or, both and. Spirit empowered, right? Infield empowered by the Spirit, yet biblically sound and theologically robust, all in the same place and space. So for me, bro, that was my vision. And like someone who may be watching this may assume incorrectly that the only way to quit is to like walk away from what you're building, because for me, that vision was a type of church. And for someone watching, it may be a type of marriage or a type of company. And there's this temptation that I dealt with to quit. I'm gonna say I deal with from time to time, to quit in terms of giving up on what I feel like I saw, like with the eyes in my heart. Because there were times where I didn't see it with the eyes of my head. Nickels and noses were there. It's like, that's not, and I wasn't saying that that's not important, but that's not why I planted it. And so when you are emotionally invested in something and that thing does not come to pass, you have to make a decision. I'm going to consistently deal with disappointment, or I'm going to quit.
Yeah.
Let me pull back my investment so I'm not disappointed so much.
Right.
And maybe what I saw isn't possible. Maybe it was too idealistic. Maybe it was too optimistic. And there have been seasons where I've been tempted to abandon that vision and settle for a version or iteration of it. But I sit here today, at least right now in this season, so glad I didn't. Because not only is our church becoming more reflective of that, I think my ministry in terms of the personal teaching ministry, whatever string, whether it's writing books or speaking or whatever, that God has given me beyond our local church, I believe it is reflective of that.
Absolutely.
And I think if I had not done that, some of the books or the book that you just mentioned, whether it's Represent Jesus or Relational Intelligence, they wouldn't have been written. Mm-hmm. I definitely, I think, would not be making the unique contribution that I've been called to make. And everybody's got to find, you got unique design, you got unique dreams, and you got unique destiny. I wouldn't be making the unique contribution that I've been created to make if I had quit in the dip. So there are a bunch of others that we could talk about, but that one right there, man,
that's huge.
What's
crazy is that your heart bails long before your body does.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so for some people that are watching, your heart bailed a long time ago. You just keep showing up at work.
Yeah.
Your heart bailed a long time ago. You just keep going to bed in the same bed with your spouse. Your heart bailed a long time ago, but you just keep showing up, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And the danger is when you lose vision. A vision, when vision becomes a mirage, you're in danger. Mm-hmm. Because you feel like you're grasping for the air, grasping for the wind. It's unattainable. And how frustrating is it when the dream inside of you is not matching the reality that's in front of you? Mm-hmm. So that's when people start quitting the dip. Do you think that time plays a huge role in people quitting? Because we want it so fast and we don't want to wait, and we don't allow the Lord to work in us, to prepare us, to get us to where we need to be?
Yes, I think time plays a huge role. So I don't think most people, some people do, you know what I mean? But I don't think most people consciously have clear-cut deadlines when it comes to things like what the company will look like by this time. I think, people, I want to be married by this time. I want this much money by this time. But when you're building something, it's, I think, subconsciously, you think it's going to happen faster than it does. Right. And you think if it doesn't happen by a certain time, it's not happening, right? Like with you, when you tell your story about 7 years, 300 people. Now, we're not making light of 300 people.
Right, it's a great size
that's
church.
Like 3 times the average attended church in America. All right, so
we just had in our heart to reach so many more.
Yeah, right. So the vision that God had given you was to reach more people than that. But a person would assume, and sometimes statistics would say, that if you hadn't broke 300 by year 7, you're probably never going to break 3,000. Like, I think in that sense, what God has done through your church is a statistical anomaly. You know what I mean? So I think, yes, I think time plays a huge role in it, but then too, there's something else, at least for me. Not just time, I think, and I was having a conversation, I'm not gonna say with who, because I don't feel like I'm name dropping, but I was having a conversation with someone just kind of about my frustration, and he said something to me so strong. See, I'm getting hyped. I'm trying to calm down. He said something to me so strong, bro. This is what he said. He said, this is the problem with you young boys. He said, you underestimate how hard you gotta strike the match before it catch fire.
Ooh. Oh my gosh.
I'm like, yes,
Right.
you're right, yes. This is the problem. He said, you underestimate how hard he said, you look at people like me and you don't know how many times I had to strike the match and how hard I had to strike the match for that thing to catch fire. And he looked at me like only he could with this intensity in his face. And he said, keep striking.
Keep striking.
That's a word for somebody right now that's watching this. Keep striking the match. If you feel God has put that thing in your heart for the business, for the church, for your life, for your family, you keep striking that match. Because at some point, if you keep striking and if God gave it to you, you will catch fire.
You know, that one scripture, a righteous man falls 7 times but keeps getting back up.
Yes.
We typically think just if he falls into sin.
Yeah, right.
But what about the idea of he collapses under the weight and the pressure of not seeing his dream fulfilled?
Yeah.
Can he get back up? Like, how many times did you have to pick yourself off the ground, dust yourself off? Like, Paul was stoned, shipwrecked, beaten, and he just kept getting back up. The reason Paul was so successful is because he didn't quit the dip.
Yeah.
And then James, the half-brother of Jesus, comes on the scene, and he's writing to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. They're actually living in caves. They're quarantined, if you will.
Yeah.
And they're living in caves because of persecution for their faith. They can't come home, and they open up this email from Pastor James, hoping that it says, we can all come home now, persecution has subsided. It's not that at all.
Yeah.
He opens the letter by saying, hey guys, count it all joy whenever you go through fiery trials, knowing something. I think the secret is in the knowing. That's one of the chapters in the book, is the secret of knowing. Paul and James are expecting us to know something. Like when Paul says in Romans chapter 8 that we know all things work to good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And then James says, we know that the testing of our faith produces something.
Yeah.
It's hard when you don't stay in the fire long enough for God to burn out all of the stuff that's not like him. He said, knowing that the testing of our faith produces patience, which I hate patience, and let patience have its perfect work so that you can be mature, complete, lacking nothing.
That's right.
We all want to be mature, complete, lacking nothing, but we don't want to test.
Yeah.
You know, like we both fly a lot,
Yeah.
and I hate flying. I love getting to the destination, but come on, I don't like the flight part. Could we skip that? But you cannot have the destination without the flight. You cannot have maturity without a test.
Yeah.
And I think our issue, kind of going back to what you were saying about the gentleman who talked to you and said, keep striking the match. I feel like we think about a timeline and God thinks about a process.
Yes.
Like even in school, we think we're ready to graduate. We're mature because we had a 9-month school, a year. And when we're 12th grade, we graduate and we are now ready for life.
Yeah.
And we are always trying to check the box with a time or a calendar. We think in terms of calendar, God thinks in terms of a process.
Yeah.
What do people need to know about the process when they're in the dip?
A couple of things. And this is tough, right? So it's easy for me to say this. Like most stuff, like it's easy to quote it. It's more complex when you're trying to live it. But it's just because it's hard truth doesn't mean it's not truth. So this is what I think. I think that the process prepares us for what we don't know we need to be prepared for. Let me tell you what I mean by that, right? So let's just take David. and I don't want to be preachy, but let's just take David he's a biblical character. Let's use him as an example, right? So his intended end, his dream, his calling ultimately was to be king, right? So that's one of the ways that God used him. But when we look at the path that he took to get there, it was a path where he was processed, right? So the process does processing. Because when you get to the palace, more than a seat called a throne is waiting on you.
Right.
Saul and spears are waiting on you too. So we can think, I'm ready for the seat and throne. And we're like, why aren't we there yet? And God's like, but what you don't know is Saul and spears are here too. So I need to process you. I need to take you through a process that processes you, that perfects you, right? That grows you, that develops you so that you can handle the thing that's waiting on you when you get to where I'm taking you, that you don't know that's going to be waiting on you. So this is what I can say unequivocally right now. I am so glad God did not give me what I thought I wanted when I wanted it.
Right.
I'm glad he made decisions based on his knowledge of my readiness and not my own. Yes. Because with more of anything comes more of everything. So I wanted a place that was this or that.
Talk about
Wall Street and off the street. But I had to become the kind of person that could genuinely connect with both of those people. So before God could send me that kind of church, God had to make me that kind of man. Woo. And I feel like that is why the process is so important. But because we don't know what's waiting on us when we get there, because that's complex. So if you're talking to church leaders, right, so we start talking about, like racial diversity is complex. It is less complex if there is not economic diversity. So if they're kind of in the same class economically, then there are going to be a lot of similarities, right? But when you got Wall Street and off the street and both their kids in children's church, that's complex.
Yeah.
Right? When you're teaching and you're trying to explain something like theodicy or why bad things happen to good people, and there are people that learn different learning styles, different levels of comprehension, different education levels, and that is more than just a few sprinkled. That's kind of the dominant dynamic of the church. It's a unique kind of complexity. So it takes more than a person thinks it's going to take to handle what you're waiting on when you get there. And you've got to be processed for that. And this Tony Evans says this. He says, one of the most dangerous and disappointing dilemmas anybody will ever face is to get to destiny unprepared.
Yeah. Same thing with Joseph. Joseph had a dream and 13 years of a dip. He wasn't prepared to be in that position of authority. Like, what 17-year-old do you know that's ready to be president?
No.
You know?
It's too much.
But I always think it's funny because when we get a dream, we have a moment with God. We have this vision in our mind, and it's a beautiful moment. We're like, oh, yes, God has so much for me. And we literally think it's happening next week.
Yeah.
We forget that everything, it takes time. Here's what I know. Like, did you ever have hand-me-down clothes growing up?
No, I did. I mean, I didn't get them from my brother, but I got it from other people. Because I didn't have a brother, so I got them from other people in my family.
Well, if you've had hand-me-down clothes, you've had hand-me-down clothes from an older sibling or a cousin. And what's the one phrase we said to our parents of why we hated it? It doesn't fit. And here's what your parents would say. Don't worry. You can grow into it.
Grow into it.
Your calling will always be bigger than you at first. But don't worry. You can grow into it.
Yeah.
You're supposed to grow into it. And I think refreshment is a huge idea in the dip. A lot of people die of spiritual dehydration in a dip. Mm-hmm. You know, they've settled in the dip.
Yeah.
And they start decorating the dip like it's their their house and where they're going to stay. I went to the gym and I've been working out a lot. I know you can tell. And
yes, of course.
I
was just thinking that. Yeah.
It's been on your mind the entire time. So I was at the gym working out, and I went to the sauna just to kind of cool down a little bit. And this guy looks at me, and you know when you get in a sauna, you're just face forward. You're just there to sweat it out and loosen up your muscles. This guy interrupts the silence of this moment, and real authoritative. He looks at me and he's like, "Where's your water?" I don't know you. Like, where's your water? And my first response was not good. I mean, in my mind, you play it out.
Yeah.
And he continues on before I could speak. He says, "I was an EMT for 30 years. And what I found out is that most people are dehydrated before they even get in here." I started bringing my water to the gym.
Yeah.
And what I realized when I first started bringing the water, I would bring my water and go to a little bench and do a workout and then go to another one and another one and another one. And I realized something. I would forget my refreshment because I wasn't used to taking it with me.
Yeah.
So I would go from test to test to test without refreshment. And I begin to realize a spiritual truth. That's what a lot of people are trying to do.
Yeah.
They're going from test to test without refreshment. The test is not the issue. Refreshment is. David said, "Oh, as the deer pants for the water, so does my soul long for you."
Yeah.
You know, Psalm 23, one translation says, "He refreshes my soul." A lot of people are in a dip. They can't see their way out. They're in the process, but they're not allowing the Lord to refresh them. They're looking to other things to refresh.
Sure.
And nothing can refresh. It's like the woman at the well. She was looking for physical water, and he's like, "Girl, I got something you'll never thirst again."
Yeah.
Here's something else too I thought about was my trainer. He told me something about a superset, and I didn't know what that was a few years back. Now, normally when you work out, you work out and you take about a minute break and then work out. So it's like test, rest, test, rest, test, rest.
Sure.
Then he took me on this one journey of superset, which is just test, 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 test. You do one activity, no rest, go to the next one, no rest, go to the next one. And you're just looking at your trainer like, "I hate you. Why am I paying you money to kill me?" But he told me, so he explained something. He said, "You can get results faster by doing a superset." And I know for some of you watching right now, it feels like a superset. It feels like test after test after test. But hang on, because those results are going to come faster. But the main priority is your refreshment.
It's good.
A lot of things in life
True.
promise refreshment. There is only one who can actually deliver refreshment. That's Christ. He's living water. You need that in the dip. No matter where you are, I'm praying that when you read this book, that you think about who can you pass it on to? Who could you buy it for? You know, people are saying, "I'm buying it for my family members.
Yeah.
I'm buying it for my spouse." Some people bought it for their whole church staff. I'm praying that the keys that God gave me to get out of my dip of fear and depression and anxiety and a plethora of other issues that I have, I got a lot of issues, that you would recognize that you don't have to stay where you are, that your dip is not your final destination. God does have a destiny on the other side of your dip, and there are people counting on you. Like, where would all the people be that you've been reaching the last few years had you quit in the dip several years ago?
So true.
They needed your story. They needed to hear how somebody else, you know, when you're going through something difficult, you don't want to talk to somebody who has never had a dip.
That's right.
You want to talk to somebody who has been in a dip and like, "Man, tell me how to get out."
Well, I tell you what, you just made me rethink my title. I'm a water boy. I bring people water.
That's right.
I help them stay refreshed in the dip. Yeah, that's right. But that's so true. And I'm with you 100% there. I think that's so underestimated. I think it's insightful. And it's encouraging. You know what I mean? I think spirituality gives you more than morality.
Wow.
When done biblically, when done properly. It gives you stamina. 100%, it gives you stamina. It gives you a degree of endurance that you could not conjure up just with your own human will and strength. It gives you the ability to hang on a cross for several hours. It gives you the ability to carry one. And so I feel like you're right. Sometimes the fatigue that we deal with is a result of spiritual dehydration. And staying, not just, watch this, not just staying refreshed, but staying around people that refresh you when you're in the dip. right? So I'm not gonna deal with that, but that is something I think is really important because you cannot be attached to people that drain you when you're in the middle of the dip, right? Because the dip in and of itself is a dilemma all by itself.
We need people to refresh us, and we need to refresh others.
Yes.
Like Proverbs 11:25, he who refreshes others will himself be refreshed.
Yes, yes.
I had this idea, the Lord gave me this picture of like how we used to be in third grade, you know, from recess, and we would all line up at the drinking fountain, and we were just trying to push everybody out of the way, because I'm so thirsty. You know, there's always that one kid, I'm so thirsty. And we think that is the same way in life. Like, I gotta take care of me. Just focus on me. And the Lord's like, oh, no, that's not how this happens. It's an upside down kingdom. Like, you refresh other people, and God says, I will guarantee you your own refreshment.
Yeah.
Oftentimes when I was struggling with depression, if I just stay home, close the blinds, and just stay by myself and throw the little pity party that no one RSVP'd to, I didn't get better. But when I went out of my way to serve somebody else, to refresh somebody else, I felt like the Lord would then refresh my spirit.
Yeah. Man, well, listen, you've been refreshing mine with this talk, and I think people are going to be refreshed with this book. And I used to have, I don't know if it's growth or age. So I don't know yet which one it is, which one it is. But, you know, I used to have a bit of trepidation in terms of just being overly conscious of perception. Like I never wanted anything to offend or inhibit or get in the way of my life's mission to help people, to serve people, and things of that particular nature. So I would be like real reticent and hesitant to really like encourage people like, no, you need to get this. You know what I mean? And it hit me one day that we only have that hesitation in an area that is the most consequential for a person's life.
Wow.
And that's their own growth and development. Like spiritual, that's the only place where we have that hesitancy. Man, it's like, I got this thing on my phone now. A friend of mine sent me this, I'm wondering if I'm gonna go check it out. It's called a milkshake bar.
What is it?
Listen, I never heard of it. Flesh and blood does not reveal this to me. But it's this crazy menu of this place he sent me down. I think it's downtown. And it's like, man, it's all kinds of milkshakes. It's like a milkshake with a brownie. Why am I getting excited about this? A milkshake with a brownie on top and some caramel on top and some M&Ms. And I'm lactose intolerant, and they got a vegan section of the menu. So that lets me know God want me to go there. God showed that to here's the point. It was unsolicited. And they're not gonna give me that. They're not gonna give me any of that milkshake. But because it was good, and because he knew, watch this, I'm lactose intolerant, and they had a section specifically for me, he sent it to me.
Wow.
Because when you believe something is specific for someone else, it's gonna add value to them, you encourage them.
Great.
And I'm like, hey, somebody watching, you need this. You need more than the conference. You need this book. Because if you quit in the dip, you are putting your destiny at risk.
Darius, thank you so much.
My pleasure, man. It's been great.
You. Thankful for your friendship. It's so great to do life together. And for everybody watching, I don't know where you are right now. You might be on a jog, you might be drinking coffee, you might be at home in the car. I'm praying that you could see clearly that God still has a purpose and a plan. Nobody's kicked God off of his throne. And don't let anybody limit you. Don't ever view your calling through the lens of somebody else's limitations. Just remember, the only one who can keep you from your destiny is you. So, let's lift the lid. Let's believe again. Get the book, buy it for a friend, and let's dive into it, because I believe with all of my heart, you're not staying in the dip. You're climbing out in Jesus' name.
Hi, John Maxwell here. I'm with my friend Sean. He wrote an incredible book. In fact, it was so good that I asked if I could do the foreword for it. Because what he's talking about, not quitting in the dip, every one of us have been in the dip. and we've been tempted to quit. But this book tells us how to get out of the dip, and even more importantly, how not to quit while we're in it. Because here's what I know, no one ever quit their way to success. They got out of the dip, continued on, right to the mountaintop. You want to read this book.
You know, a lot of times in life, we pray to God for a sign. And I feel like it's important. Sometimes God gives you a sign. And we want to do our part to make sure people get theirs.
Don't quit in the dip. This is not a must read. This is definitely a must do. Pastor Sean, this is like a response. Like the timing of this is crazy. God's perfect time. We are all collectively going through this dip. This is the answer to come out of it. Pick up a copy today. It will change your life, enabling you to change the world. Did I say everything you told me to say?
I think so.
Yes. Hazlo, por favor. Compra el libro en el día de hoy. Nombre de Jesús.
I love it.
One of the things that we wanted to do during the Don't Quit in the Dip conference was show you some real stories of people who were in a dip and climbed out of the dip. I think stories are so powerful because it gives you confidence and hope to believe that you can make it too. I understand that you guys went through a bit of a dip in your past with your marriage, and I'd love for you just to share a little bit about where you were.
We initially got married when she was 18, had just turned 18.
We were serving at our home church at the time, and the church closed down, and we felt like it was just a specific time in our lives where it was like we either pursue to look for a church or we isolate. And it was really easy to isolate. I think that that's where we found ourselves in the dip, where we had no accountability. We had nobody to oversee us and say, hey, you know what, there's things that you guys need to start addressing and talking about.
For about a year,
Yeah.
we isolated from community, from even family, So I started working 2 jobs. I was, distracted. I was almost never home, and I started looking for attention elsewhere. I started, developing emotions towards a coworker. And, that's really where we hit, rock bottom.
Like he said, like there was just a void, and we were just trying to fill it up in so many ways. And I think we both ended up at a point of desperation that eventually led to a separation.
I felt alone. I was lost. No one to go to.
It's all right.
I think it was just a little step into really fully giving into giving up. My parents were divorced, and I felt like the Lord tell me it ends with you.
Wow.
Like it's not going to continue with you. So I remember reaching out to him, and I said, you know what? I forgive you. And then at that time, my mother-in-law and my father-in-law were hosting a Spanish freedom group at their house. And they were like, you guys need to really take this curriculum and run with it. Like, this is going to be good. We end up finding out that our freedom group leaders are the leaders of the marriage mentoring within the church.
Yeah.
And what didn't happen for us for about 6 years in our marriage, it happened in 3 months.
Yeah.
Quitting was the easiest thing.
Sure.
And quitting limited what we can see like ahead of us. But I think when there's perseverance and when you get out of that dip and you decide to persevere, there's just a broad perspective of the goodness of God in your life and in your marriage. We just see God's favor over our lives, and it's so much to fight for.
Yeah.
And there's so much.
Say that. There's so much to fight for.
Yeah, and I think now we look at it, and back then quitting seemed so easy because we weren't looking at what we had.
Yeah.
And now that we see everything we have in every aspect of our lives, quitting is not an option.
No.
I think fellowship. It wasn't just a community. It was a family. And we said we were never going to step in the church again. that's to the point where we were at. And I remember walking through those doors and looking at him, I said, I think this is the place.
For me personally, the church gave us the tools, to work on what we needed to work on, which was our marriage. And there's hope.
Yeah.
Like you always say, there's hope for tomorrow and healing from yesterday. We've grown so much, in every area of our lives.
So when you guys were in the dip, you had just finished having your first child. You've had 2 more beautiful girls who would not be here had mom and dad quit in the dip. And I think there's a quick announcement you would like to share.
We're expecting our 4th baby.
Number 4, baby. Let's go.
We got the quarantine baby coming.
Quarantine baby. And you failed. This is the announcement. The family doesn't even know. This is the big announcement.
Surprise.
They're pregnant, guys. Number 4. Hi.
Say hi.
Say hi.
Hi, girls. I'm so glad you didn't quit in the dip. And I want to encourage everybody else. Do not give up. Do not quit in the dip. I want to encourage you to go to my website right now, SeanNepstead.com. Order the book. Order for your friends, your neighbor, your family members, anybody that's going through a dip. And on the website, we actually have some boxers, because that was kind of the theme, It's like so many people, they have their gloves on, they're fighting for a while. It's dangerous when your gloves come off. You give up and you're trying to throw in the towel. And we're just trying to reawaken motivation for everybody who's depressed, everybody who's stuck, everybody who feels like your marriage is on the rocks, or you feel like financially you're not going to make it. Don't give up. Don't quit in the dip. And team's done such a great job with our set here. Isn't this cool?
Yeah,
and look at our merch, guys. Merch. By the way, when you come through the drive-through book signing tomorrow, you can buy some exclusive merch like this shirt, like the sweatshirt I wore last night, Reawaken Motivation, and a couple other things that you can get. But we have a pop-up store in addition to the book signing. And babe, let's walk over here real fast.
Okay.
Remember we used to do P90X?
Yes.
We would do
years ago.
We always like P30X.
Was it Thornton?
It was only 30 days.
Thornton?
Diana's going to show us how to hit the bag. She's going to show us. I wasn't ready, Diana.
You told me as soon as I got here.
Well, no, that's good. Everybody at home, she's learning. She's in training right now. You know what, guys? This is for me. This is what you don't want to throw in, everybody. Matter of fact, if you look at this towel, we got some of these over here. They literally say, look. Can you see? Do not throw this in. Woo! This is your prophetic moment, guys. God's given every one of us a towel. You're not to throw in the towel. You're to use the towel to wipe the feet of the city that God's called you to and serve. And I believe God's going to get you out of the dip.
Yeah, that's good.
You were pretty strong there, Diana, if I don't say so myself, So she's a strong woman.
So stay tuned, and we're going to lean in and listen on one of our good friends.
Welcome, everybody, to Don't Quit in the Dip. This conference is just blowing my mind right now. I can't believe that the book is out, and you can order your copy wherever books are sold. And I'm so thrilled today because I have the great honor and privilege of sitting with the living legend, Lisa Turker. Thank you so much for taking time with us today. It means the world.
Thank you. I'm very excited about your book. You know that I've been a fan of this book, this message. This is a right now word, and I needed it right when I read it. Wow. And I know everyone who gets this book is gonna, first of all, they're gonna fly through the pages because it's a very good, easy read. But it feels fresh, it feels needed. It was extremely helpful and encouraging. So thank you. It's an honor to be here with you.
You were actually the first one to read it.
I know, I was shocked by that because...
I haven't let my wife read it, our daughter.
I know, we were on a conference call, you and your wife,
right.
And I started talking about, all the different parts of your message that I liked, and I could tell your wife was like, wait, I haven't even read this book yet.
Well, I dedicated it to her. So this week we actually got the first copies, and she opened it up, and I wanted her to see the dedication to her. It was a special moment, really special.
That made up for it all.
Yeah,
so that's
but
good.
to have Lisa Turker, I mean, you've sold millions of books. You are an author. You're an accomplished speaker around the world, sought after, and to have you read the book, I was nervous when you said I read it. I was like, oh okay. What's she gonna say? So the fact that you liked it, the fact that you felt like it ministered to you, it blessed me like crazy. You have no idea.
Well, thank you. I want to read back to you
Yeah.
a couple of quotes from the book because we live in a quote obsessed society. So I think it's not always whole books that change people's lives.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's sentences
So
within books that have the deepest, profound impact because we can remember sentences and we can preach them back to ourselves. So is it okay if I just give these two
ladies and
quotes
gentlemen,
away?
Lisa Turkers is reading quotes from my book.
Okay. Here's one. Time doesn't automatically fix things. If we aren't doing the right things, time often makes things worse.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I like so much about your book is, the popular statement that you often will hear people say is time heals all wounds.
Right.
I have said before, time can heal wounds, but it's what you plant in the rich soil of time that determines the crop that you will reap. And so I like that you are addressing this, but I really like how you phrase this. If we aren't doing the right things, time often makes things worse. And that's true. And so when people are in a dip, first of all, I think, I'm not going to speak for people. I'm going to say when I'm in a dip, okay? When I'm in a dip, sometimes I feel like it is an end. And you have helped me see it's not always an end. It's often a dip. And that was really profound. It gave me a picture in my mind because I tend to, confession time. Is it okay if I confess?
Oh, please.
I tend to, when something happens, my brain runs ahead to worst case scenarios like that. So it's not natural for me to think about that this doesn't have to mean the sky is falling, the world is ending, this relationship is over, the ministry is, going to end, and I'm going to be homeless somewhere, know? And I mean, like my brain just does crazy things like that. What you helped me see is that there is a time and a season where dips happen. It's normal. It's almost to be expected. But one of the most important things to do is not only recognize that it's not an end, but it's a dip, and what to do when you're there. And your book perfectly equips. What are we supposed to do with the time that we're in the dip? How do we recognize it? And what do we do to not get stuck in the dip?
Right.
I think that's really important. Okay, one more. Ready for this? Okay. Just because we don't see God moving does not mean he's not working. He is working behind the scenes of our lives. And this is in a story where you went to, was it Phantom of the Opera?
Exactly, yes. My wife is a classically trained opera singer, and she loves the arts, which I do too. We both grew up in music, but very, very different. Like I grew up in Black gospel music. She grew up in classical music, and I thought it'd be nice if I took her to an opera.
And it was nice, but it was really a musical.
Yeah, she told me. She was like, oh, it's not an opera. I'm like, well, they need to change the name then, because that's confusing.
But what made me laugh is when it got to intermission, you were like, well, that was a weird place to end, but all right, next, and you were ready to stop. And of course, then your beautiful wife said, this is intermission. So you went out, I think you got popcorn.
Yeah, I was excited. They had snacks at
They got
the
snacks and came back in. The theater itself doesn't look any different, except when they opened the curtain, everything had changed. Yeah. And I thought that story was so profound because it gave me a visual picture of sometimes it's just not God's right time to open the curtain yet and reveal what he's done or has been doing. But I have to keep reminding myself, we don't serve a do-nothing God.
Oh, so good.
God is always doing something. He's always changing, shifting, rearranging. And I think the reason why this quote was so important to me is because the past 5 years of my life have been the hardest that I have ever walked through. And part of what I was going through was just extreme turmoil and chaos in my marriage. My husband hit a really rough patch in his life, and I discovered he was being unfaithful. And it was so shocking to me. And of course, with my tendency that I already confessed, running ahead to worst case scenarios, this was just the ultimate of my brain running ahead and painting worst case scenarios. And there were so many times that I prayed and fully expected God to do something big. And then because I couldn't see changes immediately in my husband, in my circumstances, in what I thought God would do, I started to assume that God wasn't doing anything. And that is a very hopeless place to be. And I even started setting the scene for God to move. I don't know if you've ever done this. I think you have, though, because I think you and I are wired similarly in some things, especially the story where you were having all your church members write letters because, well, you can read it in the book. It's a really great story. But I just remember thinking, I need to figure out what to pray so that I can make all these suggestions to God. And then I need to set the scene so God can move. And the problem with that, I don't think it's bad that we, in our prayers, make suggestions to God. I think we can pour out our heart in any way, and God just loves that intimate connection with us. But the problem is when we get up from praying and we try to hold God accountable to what we assume a good God should do, and then when God doesn't follow our plan, we start to wonder if he's really a good God.
Yeah.
And that started to happen to me. And, Sean, I've been a Christian for a long time. I've been a Bible teacher for a long time. And yet I was still pulled into what I feel like is such a trap of the enemy. And that is, if God isn't moving your way, he's not moving anyway. And that's just not true. And I if we had more time, I would tell you a longer version of this story. But our story was not a short journey. It was a long season filled with many sleepless nights. It was 2.5 years that my husband didn't even live in the house with me. We had raised our 5 kids, and when my last child moved out, so did my husband. And I was literally more alone than I'd ever been in my entire life for 2.5 years. It was a very, very long journey. And I would say I'm still walking through the healing process. But for much of that journey, because all I saw was my husband making choices that broke my heart, and I didn't see God just physically doing something, I just thought, God isn't doing anything. And I thought my husband was just having the time of his life, and I was brokenhearted, and I just could not understand what God was doing. And so one of the things I tried to set him up for success, like set God up for success. So I invited Art to a prayer meeting. Yeah. And I just thought, today's the day I'm going to see the miracle, right? And I wish I had read your book at that point, because I think I would have had a bigger perspective that God is still a God who works in miraculous ways. Yeah. But sometimes his miracles are slow working, so slow that when we try to watch them in real time, day to day, we don't see it because our physical eye isn't trained to see minute movements of God. We want to see big, miraculous, evident movements of God. But God does some of his best work in the unseen.
So good.
And so at this prayer meeting, I kept waiting. It's like, and then finally there was this praise song. Art stood up and he lifted his hands, and I thought, here it is. Here's the moment. Like, he's going to turn to me. He's going to say, wow, the scales have been lifted. I want to come home. I love you. I choose you. And it just didn't happen. And we left. And I went back home, and I just remember thinking, like, I don't think that God's ever going to answer my prayer. And eventually, God did answer my prayer. And eventually, Art surrendered his heart to the Lord. But what I realized, all those suggestions that I was making of how God could surely and should surely fix this, God didn't listen to any of my suggestions. Because I was only after change behavior. God was after rescuing his soul.
Wow.
And so I think what we have to remember, whether we're in a relational dip or like you were in a dip where you just felt so stuck in your life work, your ministry, your church, or whatever dip that somebody is in, wherever you hit a low spot and you just think, I don't think God's going to rescue me. I don't think that God's going to make all these prayers come true or give me this vision that I thought he was going to give me. I think whenever we reach that place, we have to remember that we should never try to limit God to only what our human minds can think up.
Yeah.
Because that sometimes can come to fruition just by hard work. But if you want to see a move of God, it's going to come from a thought of God. And God's thoughts are always higher than our own.
When God says my ways are higher than your ways, it's not a little bit. It's so much higher. And the idea of Romans 8, when he says all things, like there's a secret of knowing. That's one of the chapters, the secret of knowing, because Paul says, and we know that God causes all things to work together. He doesn't suggest, he doesn't, gently nudge. He makes them, forces them to work together. Not for everybody, but for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. That's the idea of God working behind the scenes. And rarely does it look like what we want it to look like. One of the chapters in the book, I talk about cooking. I like to bake. I'm a baker. My wife's an amazing cook. I love to bake. Chocolate molten lava cakes, my specialty, my favorite. I'm a chocoholic.
Did you bring me one?
No, I'm a chocoholic and don't want deliverance. But you think about, nobody's ever woken up in the middle of the night and said, you know what? I'm so hungry right now. I could sure go for a spoonful of flour. Or let me just get a whole bottle of oil. Or raw eggs at 2 a.m. Nobody's just sat down and just poured salt into a bowl and watched a rom-com. None of these ingredients are pleasant alone.
That's right.
But when you mix them together, there's something that happens to the molecular structure. And then you put them into the heat, 350 degrees, and don't take that cake out before it's time because it will collapse. But there's something that happens in the mixing side of things. It's where the bitter is overtaken by the sweet. It's where, what was flat begins to rise. And if you stay in there long enough, you will have something that people will be lined up literally to just take a bite. When it comes to our life, none of the events in our life were pleasant alone. All of them, some of them were hurtful, abusive. Some of us have sat literally under our desk, like I talk about, weeping, just so stuck in depression, fear, worry, anxiety, thinking nothing will ever change. But Paul's reminding us, guys, we have to remember he is working.
That's right.
He's working it all. He takes the good, he takes the bad and the ugly, stirs in his grace, puts a little heat in there. And if we stay in long enough, we realize that every season is a seasoning in God's great recipe.
Oh, that's good. Sure.
So nothing's wasted with God. He's the great recycler. Some people try to encourage you and say, well, all things happen for a reason. Yeah, sometimes they happen because we made a mistake or somebody else hurt us, but it's not always a good reason. That doesn't mean that God makes all things happen, but he can work good out of all things. And the idea of us not being able to see the workers behind the scenes of Phantom of the Opera, there was an entirely different crew working behind the scenes while we were stuffing our face with popcorn and soda. And when those curtains opened up, it was a new set. It was new costumes. Everything had changed.
It was a new day.
It was a new chapter.
And I think that visual was so powerful. And that's part of what I love in your book. I think people are going to get new visuals to have access to when they're going through something really, really hard. Now that Art and I, we are back together, we're doing the long good but hard work of healing. I'm able to have conversations with him about those seasons where it just looked like he was having the time of his life. And I'll ask him questions like, did you ever hear God speaking to you then? Or, were you as happy as I assumed that you were? Because it just seemed it seemed like an incredibly bitter pill to swallow.
Wow.
That I was trying to pursue God, and I was more miserable and more desperate and more heartbroken than I'd ever been. And then to watch him do everything opposite of what I thought that season of our life would look like. And it appeared like he was just experiencing happiness and joy. And it just messed with me, And so I asked him, I'm able to have these conversations with him. And he would say, Lisa, I had to look that way on the outside to mask how miserable I was on the inside. He said, sin is kind of like this enticing thing that you reach for, but once you get close enough, it's like these jaws, this death grip, like sinks into you. And if you pull back, it feels like it's just going to rip you apart. So you stay, but no part of being stuck in that death grip is pleasant. Yeah. And I was like, wow, God, you were doing something. And what I started to recognize is sin. Part of the reason that God tells us don't do certain things is because God knows sin has consequences built into it. Yeah. Like when we choose to sin, it's a package deal. It may look fun at first, but there is suffering inside the sin choices that we make. And Art certainly was going through that suffering. And so what I saw on the outside was nothing. But what was happening behind the scenes is God was wooing him, not just to change his behavior, but to truly rescue his soul.
Wow. I have this idea of hot water through cold pipes. And the idea is in the wintertime, when you run and take a shower, the water's never hot immediately. You wait there, you wait. It's freezing. You don't get in right away. You're waiting for it to get warm. Nobody gets in and just shuts the water off immediately and says, oh, forget it. You know that if you wait long enough,
the hot water
will come through those cold pipes.
Right.
Same idea when we pray in the dip, when we feel like, God's not answering. I've been praying, like we prayed for a long time before something tipped and tilted and we began to see breakthrough. But if you quit before, you'll never see it. God's promises are kind of like hot water through cold pipes. You pray, and it's that in-between season that's so uncomfortable because you're like, we live in such a microwave society. I mean, I tap my foot at the microwave.
Yep.
Like, it's going to take 30 seconds for a Pop-Tart, or why is it taking so long? And so we turn around and we say that same thing to God, like, I want it right now, right now. What I realized in writing the book is that even in the dip, I was expecting things to change around me, and God was changing things in me.
Oh, yeah.
Like there was things he was working in me that needed to get to another level for us to go to another level. And had we quit in the dip, we never would see, the miracles and the benefits and the lives change. Maybe talk about this side of the dip. I mean, we're out of the dip and then there's another dip. There's different dips in life, but can you talk to us about how grateful you are that you didn't quit in the dip?
Yeah. And, it was hard because I had so many competing voices of people wanting to offer help. I mean, they definitely wanted to offer help, but a lot of people just said, you need to just close the door on that relationship and move on, and you have every right to do so. And I agreed. And, as I sat before the Lord, I asked the Lord, what do I do? Because it seemed to me like the harder work would be to stay and heal that way. when, at first it seemed, and a lot of people were saying, just move on. But at the end of the day, I think God would have blessed me either way. I do. But I had to know that I had given my marriage everything. I had to know it. And, a lot of people aren't given that choice. And I'm a big believer that even if what's on the other side of the dip for you in relationships, sometimes it's not possible for that relationship to be reconciled. Sometimes it's not safe. Sometimes you just aren't given that choice. And I'm a big believer that if you will just recognize that your job is to be obedient to God, God's job is everything else. God is a God of redemption, and it's not dependent on what other people do or don't do. It is between you and God. So whether reconciliation happens or not, God's redemption is certain. Absolutely. And I think God wants to redeem every life story, every single one. But for me, I was given that choice. And I don't think, for me, the decision came down to what do I think will make me happy 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road. I think happiness could have been found in either path. I don't think the decision was what's more reasonable, and try to reason it out, because I think there were reasonable reasons to go this way and there were reasonable reasons to go that way. At the end of the day, for me, I love my husband. I do. And I was given that choice. And I think that God would have blessed me no matter which choice I made. But it's those quiet little moments where when, my grandkids come over and, they color all over the walls or they do something crazy. And I look over at Art and he's not aggravated because those grandkids are as much part of him as they are me. And so for me, given that choice, that's when I know, this is the right path. And it doesn't mean it's easy. It never is. Just like I'm sure, I love your story of what happened with your church. But I am sure just because you've had explosive growth, incredible influence, and God has answered so many of those prayers, and you are having influence over thousands of people and families and life change. But I'm sure you still have days where you sit at your desk and think, I could still crawl under my desk because today's really hard, right? Yeah. But the training that you got in the dip is what built the character that you can tap into on the other side of the dip, because God built your character to match your calling. And so even though you still have days where you want to crawl under the desk, even though I still have days where I want to throw the orange juice carton across the kitchen and peg Art, because we're all going to have those. Getting on the other side of the dip doesn't fix everything, but it changes the perspective we carry into anything else that we face.
I don't know how people make it through the dip without the Lord. There's this longing for more. Advertisers say and promise more, 50% more free, more TV channels, more horsepower. We all want more. And I think I would surmise a lot of things in life promise more, but there's only actually one who can deliver more, and that's the Lord. In the dip, you turn to the Lord. And what else would you say to people who are in a dip right now? Could be in their marriage, it could be something else. What would you say? Because when you're in the dip, you can't see beyond the dip. Your view is obstructed by the dip, but your destiny's on the other side of the dip. What would you say to people right now to hang on, to continue, to forge ahead in that difficult season?
I would say don't overcomplicate what you're supposed to do right now. Just like you went back to the basics and you turned everything around in your struggling church by having a prayer meeting. And it seems so obvious and yet so beautifully miraculous all at the same time. That wasn't an overcomplicated situation. It's not like a billionaire came to your church, you know, because if that's the way that the story went, not very many people have access to billionaires, you know, but you started having a prayer meeting and it's like.
Took me 7 years.
It took you 7 years, but you know.
I'm the pastor. Hey guys, maybe we should pray, like slowly.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But I just think that's so beautiful. So I would say don't overcomplicate things and don't think that you have to reach for the stars in trying to find the solution, you know? Sometimes you just need to kneel down and pray and get quiet and let the Lord do what he's really good at doing. I in my situation, I had to just start praying a simple prayer, and I prayed it very, very often. And the prayer was this: God, I want to see you. God, I want to hear you. God, I want to know you. And God, I want to follow hard after you every single day. And before my feet even hit the floor, I say yes to you today.
Wow.
And I knew I wasn't going to see God's physical form, and I knew I wasn't going to walk outside and probably hear a booming, audible voice. But what that started to do is set my heart in a place of expecting to experience God. So I started looking for him, not in the big, huge ways like writing in the sky, but instead just looking for him in the small places so that I didn't miss him.
Wow.
And that was profound for me. And there were small answers to those prayers, small ways that I saw God working, small things that God would speak to my heart that I thought were so small, but in the end, they wound up being incredibly profound.
I love this quote from you that says, "But staying stuck in trying to wish something away will cause me to miss the beauty of what is, and even better, trusting God for what can be." This echoes really the message of don't quit in the dip. Like a lot of people miss out on what God really does have for us because they quit too early. I feel like there's always a dream, and then there's a dip right before the dream is fulfilled, or success. And a lot of people quit here. And successful people are not people who didn't have a dip. I mean, you're incredibly successful, author, speaker. You've overcome so much in your life. And people look at you and oftentimes think, oh, she had it easy. They have no idea of the endless tears of desperation and prayers of dependence in the dip that kept you going so that you can be where you are today, blessing so many thousands of people's lives. And your story gives hope to so many people.
Thank you. Yeah, I do get tickled sometimes when people say, like, what does it feel like to be, you know, an overnight success? And I just kind of want to laugh and say an overnight success, 25 years in the making. Because, you know, you're right. They don't see the years of rejection letters from publishers. They don't see the years of wanting to have an impact on the multitudes and yet just showing up to my kitchen table and homeschooling my 5 kids.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was how God assigned me that day, that season, to change the world. They don't see that I had one part-time staff member that, you know, sometimes she would get paid and sometimes she wouldn't, right? They don't see when I showed up to a board meeting at Proverbs 31 and our budget that I was wanting them to approve was $16,000. And I had actually called to ask, what is the value of my minivan, so that I could tell the board, if everything falls apart, I'll sell my van.
Sell the van.
and you guys won't be out a penny. Like, I'll pay for this whole big flopping failure if it is, you know? And yeah, there's so many of those days. So call it a dip, call it training, call it what you want. I call it necessary. Because if I hadn't gone through those times, I would never be able to appropriately handle what I have now. I would take too much credit, and I would be too proud that I had done something. But, you know, when you can look back and remember the day you were under the desk, you know, the day I was showing up to my board meeting. Oh, and by the way, on that budget sheet, I'd misspelled 2 words. So that built a lot of confidence in my team. Or even when I said, when email first came out, you know, this email thing's never going to stick. Like, this is going backwards. Why would we type our words out? We have modern day telephones, right? Never going to take off. The World Wide Web, not going to be a thing.
Joke.
Right? But I'm so grateful that I look back now, and I know it was God. I know it was God in my ministry. I know it was God in my writing. I know it was God in my marriage, and He didn't always allow what I thought He should allow, and He definitely didn't always do what I thought He should do in the timing that I thought He should do it. But He did it right, and I'm grateful.
I just want to thank you for not quitting in the dip. Because you didn't, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people through your organization, Proverbs 31, through your books, through your speaking. I don't know where some of them would be had you quit in the dip. But because you didn't, God's given you grace. He's given you a story and a testimony that's helped so many people.
Thank you, Sean. And thank you for this book. This book is going to help so many people. And as you're making your list of all the people that it helps, you can put Lisa Turker right at the top. So thank you. It's a great book. It's a great gift that you're giving to people.
Love it. Would you mind just praying for everybody who feels like they're in a dip right now?
Absolutely. God, thank you for this day. Help us to all just hit the pause button and turn to you as we recalibrate where we are. Maybe we're on a mountaintop, maybe we're in the dip of the valley, or maybe we're just on a really long journey and we're not sure where we're at. But God, here's what we desire with everything in us. God, we want to see you. God, we want to hear you. God, we want to know you. And God, we want to follow hard after you. And so before we even open our eyes from this prayer, we say yes to you, whatever your invitation may be. We have a heart of yes to you, God. And Lord, just help us to recognize your voice. Help us to see your activity. Give us unusual ability to know where you want us to go and what you want us to do. And take this book that Sean has written, I believe, is an act of obedience to you. And I pray that you would extend the message far and wide, and that people wouldn't just read it, but that they would return to it time and time again, see it as a resource for doing life and ministry and relationships your way. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
A million thank yous. You're amazing, and I appreciate you so much. And for everybody who has not yet purchased the book, make sure you go anywhere books are sold right now to get your copy of Don't Quit in the Dip. And think about somebody else who's in the dip that needs it. Because a lot of times when you're in a dip, you're not thinking about a book to read, you're just trying not to drown in life. So it might be good to buy a book for someone else. It might be good to buy it for your church staff. We're hearing stories of people saying, I bought 5 books for my whole family. We're buying it for our staff. But I pray that this blesses you like it's blessed us. Thank you so much, Lisa. God bless you. And I'm so grateful that you didn't quit in the dip.
Thank you.
Hey guys, I'm standing here with my friend Sean Napstead, and I've got to tell you, this book is a book for this moment. Which one of us does not feel like we are in a dip right now? You're going to learn how to get out of the dip, focus on Jesus, and step into your purpose.
Hey everybody, my friend Sean Nepstad, he wrote a book you need, Don't Quit in the Dip. That's where we quit, but not now. We know how to keep going. The book is here. You've been waiting for it your whole life. Read that thing, let's grow. We could be like Sean if we get this right.
It seems like everybody's going through some sort of dip in this season. But there's one family who is going through really a tragedy of a dip. And that is Christina, who just lost her husband, Mike. We just found out about this about 48 hours ago. And so it's still too fresh to even make a call to her. But Christina, if you're watching, we just want to let you know that we're praying for you. Your church is standing with you and your kids. And I know this is the deepest dip of your life. Words always seem to fall flat in this moment. It's grief, it's tragedy, it's loss. And the Bible says that He walks with us even through the valley of the shadow of death. And so I just want to say that the Lord is with you, that your church family loves you. And in this moment of a dip, I know nothing really can help. No words can help in this moment, but we just want to, as a church family, reach out to you and say, we're going to take care of your house payment for this month. And really, it's going to be just a small way to say we love you. And just in a small way, ease the pressure of this moment. I know you loved your husband so much. And that's why we're not just doing 1 month. We're going to take care of your house payment for 3 months in this dip. I'm praying for you that the comfort of the Holy Spirit would undergird you and give you the strength that you need to carry on.
What an incredible night 2 of our conference.
Incredible.
To hear their stories, to hear people who have struggled, who are where we would like to be someday, and really role models that they all have had a dip. And the one thing that separates people who are successful, people who make it to their destinies, one of the biggest things is they just didn't quit in the dip.
Right.
They surrendered their controls of their life to Jesus Christ, and God got them through. I want to encourage you, go get the book on this eve of the release. Can't believe the book comes out tomorrow, everybody.
So exciting.
We've been waiting for so many years for this, and it's finally here. And I'm so grateful that we get to share it with you. How powerful is this that we get to partner with you? Let's show all the book distributors that there's a need for more books like this. Go buy the book wherever books are sold. And if you're a part of our church, we're doing the small group curriculum coming up August the 22nd. The book signing is happening tomorrow, along with our pop-up store where you can get merch like this and hoodies and all this kind of fun stuff. And I believe with all of my heart that this book is going to help change people's lives. So if you're in a dip, if you know anybody in a dip, go to my website right now, SeanNepstead.com, or buy the book anywhere books are sold. Buy them for your friends. Buy them for anybody who's in a dip. And let's change the world together. Let's help some people get out of their dip and make sure that we go make some more stories together. Don't miss tomorrow. We have some incredible speakers for night number 3.